The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 141 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders. I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. Good to be with you again. You've always got a smile in your voice when you do that.
I know. Well, it's important to have that smile on the face, certainly when we're recording, but I'd like to try and keep it on there at all times too.
You're not just delighted how many new members we're pleased to come and join us, and looking forward to serving those members well and helping them to chart their own progress from financial insecurity to financial independence. I always get excited when new members join because I know what's coming and it's fantastic for them. The transformation is just brilliant. Anyway, what have we got today? Something a bit complex, actually, but made simple by a very competent guest today.
Yes, that's right. Our guest today is Harriet Dunn, who's the co-founder of TitleSplit.com. And Harriet is one of our trusted connections, and she's a respected property investor in her own right, and also trainer in property since 2004. So lots of experience, a background as well as a commercial solicitor for many years. So she brings a lot of knowledge to our conversation today, Kevin. And title split goes back hundreds of years, right? It's one of probably the oldest ways of people building wealth for themselves.
Well, yes, I mean, from the landed gentry parceling off pieces of land to sale, that's been a wealth building strategy for hundreds and hundreds of years. Then, of course, you don't need to look far. You and I often meet in London, and you take a little walk around London, particularly some of the nicer parts, and those massive houses have all been kind of sectioned off. And any of the nice big cities in the UK have done that, haven't they? You look around, all those big Regency townhouses, 3-4 stories, have all turned into flats, and that's title splitting. So it is definitely been a method of wealth creation for hundreds of years, but it's not just that, is it? It's not just the big properties, because they're hard to find, they're hard to buy because they're so expensive. But there are many, many ways that you and I can do that in our day-to-day wealth building lives.
Yeah. So if you're already a property investor, or certainly property is something you're looking at as a strategy, then pay close attention today, because Harriet's got lots of tips and ideas that might just help you see things in a different light. So let's head on to our conversation with Harriet Dunn. Harriet, welcome to Wealth Talk today.
Thank you.
Good to have you on. So, Harriet, Kevin and myself have been speaking to you, and you're the co-founder of TitleSplit.com, and you are a very experienced trainer in the world of property and an interesting background. So why don't we start there and let our listeners know a little bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, so yes, my name is Harriet Dunn. I'm the co-founder of TitleSplit.com with Rachel Knight. So my background is that for far too many years, I was a commercial property solicitor. I entered the legal world in 1993, which seems an awful long time ago. Worked for many top London firms, worked for some local firms. I even ran my own legal practice for many years, which was very niche, specialising in property. 2014, our youngest son got married, left home. And we thought that'll do. We'd always set quite a lot of goals, and our goal was, once the children were sort of sorted, to go travelling. So took the brave step, walked away from being a solicitor, which I'll tell you felt really hard. Actually, you shouldn't be so attached to your label, really, but I'm afraid in life we often are, aren't we? Retired from being a solicitor, rented out the house, and we went travelling.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's wonderful and important, isn't it, that we reconnect with the why, because we work hard, we still do, right? And there's always a reason, and for most people it is, to have that freedom of choice, and that could mean to spend more time with their family, to spend more time exploring the world, and for you, obviously, that was important to just break free and go and explore.
Yeah, it was great, really. And it's something that a lot of people just aren't brave enough to do. And I just really wish they would be. We lived in Bangkok which I absolutely loved. Lived in the centre of Bangkok for nearly a year. That was amazing. From Bangkok, we travelled around China, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Singapore. Came back and thought, it's not enough. And then we went to America and lived outside San Diego and travelled around America. Also, we travelled around Australia. So we were away in total about 2.5 years. Although we were away, I'm not going to pretend I wasn't also working remotely, doing things that I like to do, which was the property training. Because that was the beauty, was if you're doing anything that's not face-to-face, you don't have to be sat in an office. We had the rental incomes from our properties, but I was still working with people. I love working with people, helping them develop themselves, improve their lives. I was able to do it from a beach in Thailand. I can't believe I actually said that. I actually did that.
Well, it's, I think it's a dream many people have, but they ask the question, well, just how do you do that? So if I can just dig a little deeper then, you mentioned there, income from properties. So, what actually allowed you to be able to spend 2 years, outside the UK, and how did you manage like your home and things like that?
Yeah. Do you know what the thing that made us to do it was having it as a goal 5 years beforehand. And it enabled us that whenever we were planning anything, whether it was whether it was something within our business or it was something within our personal life, that we knew within 5 years we would not physically be living in England, working in England. So it's really silly things like when the car needs replacing, or if it's a lease car through the business, you don't go sign a 4-year contract because you're not going to be here. So you haven't got the overheads of the lease car. It's about planning and organising what you want to achieve. Also knowing how much we needed per month to be able to do that and make sure we could generate that income without being in a day job or even being self-employed, having to be physically in one place. So once you know that, and also bearing in mind that you tend to travel, most of us love to travel to Southeast Asia, the cost of living is quite a lot lower as well. So a combination, if you've got the rental income, which takes us back to titlesplit.com, because one of the things is, I know a lot of people rely on HMO income, but that actually is quite a lot of work. So a buy-to-let income, plus other income from other sources. So because also the idea that a lot of us, we enjoy working anyway. So if you've got income from something else that doesn't actually have to be sat at a desk. So it's planning that enables you to do it. And then you just have to be brave enough to just pack and go.
Yeah. Yeah. So really important point there. And, we find every day, obviously we're both speaking to different people who are on different sort of stages of their journey, but you need to have a clear plan. You need to have good support, and then you just need to be 100% focused on that. And, just small steps, doesn't have to be crazy, just consistency.
What you just said, Christine, is something I say. I always say baby steps. So I've always said this. I used to say it to my children, whatever happens, we will get older. We're not going to not hit 50. We're not going to not hit 55. We're not hit 60. Whatever happens, we will get older. So if you think to yourself, I want to go traveling for 2 years in 3 years' time, that looks like an absolute mountain. How can you do that? But if you think to yourself in baby steps, well, I'll do this month and I'll do this that month, then all of a sudden, it's not a mountain that you have to climb anymore. You just do everything in life in baby steps.
Yeah, agreed. Now, I know we're going to get into the details of title splits today, but I think it's just interesting to kind of hear, how you led up to that. So obviously you went traveling, had an amazing time, you came back, and then, what year were we talking about then?
We're talking about 2017 that we came back, I think it was. I'm losing track of the years. One thing that I missed, so when I stopped being a solicitor, the thing that I missed most of all, and it sounds a bit soppy this, but I missed my clients. I didn't miss doing the work. I didn't miss the stress, but I really missed working with another person to achieve something. And I work closely with all my commercial clients on their development. So I was very much a hands-on solicitor. I said I'd walk the site, I'd look at the plans with them, we'd look at how they could do sale and lease backs, we'd look at how they could particularly use their SSAS to create long leases. And I missed that interaction. And it was something, and I wanted to get back into that, but I didn't want to go back to being the doer, if you like. I didn't want to be back on the tools. I also work with another company where I do a commercial property training. I'm their commercial property trainer, and I love that. But what I was very aware of after the crash, after the Lehman Brothers went on, was I had a lot of people come to me to help solve their problems after they had gone wrong with property. And I always used to say, if only you'd spoken to me before you had bought. And around 2017, when I came back, I was actually doing a property symposium in Las Vegas, of all places. And one of my students, my clients, was Rachel. And Rachel was already doing title split. And she'd been looking. She did title split of one of her first deals. And she was looking for somebody to help her do it. And I said, of course, I can help you do it. Because what we achieve through title split is owning fewer properties which have individual units on individual legal titles that can be sold or refinanced at any time to the open market, but fundamentally is a buy-to-let portfolio. So you squeeze the most out of the asset, but it is fundamentally a buy-to-let portfolio. And done correctly, it enables you at a moment's notice to say, do you know what? I think, say you've got one building, I don't mind if it's mixed use, residential or commercial, and let's say it's in 4 units, and let's say you never split the title, you just created that multi-unit freehold building, and you say, right, do you know what, in 6 weeks we're going to lock up the house, rent it out and go travelling. And you might think to yourself, well, but we actually need to sell something to have the money. Well, if you have to sell that whole multi-unit freehold building, the only person that's going to buy it from you is another investor. And they're going to want a discount. You're going to want a quick sale, so you are going to offer a discount. If you've title split that, and actually you're selling 4 leasehold units, and let's just say they are apartments, you're just going to pop them on Rightmove. And who's going to buy them? A buy-to-let investor, a homeowner, someone for serviced accommodation. So you've just taken an asset that wasn't that liquid to make it quite liquid. And that's fundamentally, I mean, there's more to it than that. There's the increase in the capital valuations. Of course, there's more to it than that. But, on our chat, I think it relates nicely back to that flexibility that it gives you.
Yeah. So just trying to keep it as simple as we can for anyone who perhaps, is just new to this, maybe they just haven't heard of title splits or don't fully understand, well, how does it work? Who is this strategy for? Is it for anybody or someone who's already got some property experience?
I would say it's for somebody who either has properties, been doing it, know what they're doing okay, but they also know there's more to it and they're missing a trick. So there's people that actually doing property now maybe not had any training. It works for somebody who's done quite a lot of training and educational property training and has some properties. But it also works for people who've actually done some good property training out there, but have maybe only done one deal. And very often the reason they've only done one deal is because actually either they're probably very, very busy and don't have time to go buy individually 30 buy-to-lets to get that financial freedom figure they need. Or it's a combination of the fact that they really just don't want to have the hassle of lots of HMOs. So the other way that you might have heard of it, you might have heard people call it freehold leasehold. So basically what we're talking about is either buying some land and subdividing it into a separate plot. So, for example, I just did a lovely consultancy call with a lady who's buying a bungalow. She's going to get planning on part of the land, and split the title. So it could be land, or it's a physical building where you're going to create more than one unit. As I say, it can be mixed use, commercial or residential, and you're going to actually legally split the title into leaseholds. And the other thing that we also look at is common hold, because common hold is coming and it's coming fast. So so everything that we do through training and consultation is future proof. So we nicely transition from leasehold into common hold.
Yes, and obviously these are all things that you cover on your training with Rachel.
Yeah,
and
our training consultation.
Yeah, I know you have a masterclass, I believe. So maybe we give a link. Well, we can link to that in the show notes, but maybe just let our listeners know, what they can expect if they want to find out more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our masterclass is a great introduction. It tells you more about it. It's over 2 hours, so you can really find, and it's out there for anybody really who's in the property world, either doing it or had the training, but just want to get to that. Do you know, I almost describe as the real life and the original training is almost like the degree. And when you're getting into title split, you're almost getting into that nuances of your MA, but it's for everybody. It's practical. It's really practical.
And that's a free masterclass. So we'll definitely link to that in today's show notes. So anyone who's interested can jump on that. So, what kind of properties really lend themselves to this? And have you got any recent examples? So many of our listeners, Harriet, are property investors. They may be sitting on a portfolio that, is just absolutely open to this strategy.
So what you need to picture is this. Basically, what it's going to be, depending where it is in the UK. So I looked at a lovely one last week, which was on the northeast coast, actually, near the seaside. And it was a beautiful Victorian building that used to be a care home. But it was quite small. I don't want you to picture anything. It was actually quite small. It was beautiful. And the rooms are big enough. So the secret is it has to be big enough. Or if it very similar, of course, the nice starter one is the shop with the top, the shop with the flat above. And I'm not necessarily talking even about converting the shop to residential either, even leaving it as mixed use. And then the other one, of course, is you can envisage the tall 3-story building where you walk in the main door and there's a beautiful staircase going up, that sort of thing. But also Rachel, first one that Rachel did was actually 2 terraced houses next to each other. It was actually just 2 terraced houses next to each other that became, I think she created 3 apartments from that, but depending on the side, it could even be 4 apartments. So it literally has to be something that you can have probably more than one access to. And or if you came in the main hallway, it's a big enough. So it's something that's big enough, really. Did that answer the question, Christian? I don't know if I answered the question there.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely gives an indication of people that perhaps have got these properties right now and they're just not aware that they could do something with it.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're probably looking at them and they're probably so mindset in the HMO, they're probably over-focusing on this is going to be a HMO. And I'd encourage them to literally step back on the pavement or go on Google Earth and think, hang on for a second. Actually, if this was 4, 5, 6 apartments or even just 3 apartments, could actually I get a similar cash flow without the hassle of lots of tenants? Not that I'm criticising HMOs, because I'm not at all. Right area, all the rest of it, they're great. But we're talking about owning a diverse portfolio. You have to have a diverse portfolio. If I've learned anything being in property since the 90s, you have to have a diverse portfolio.
Yeah. Well, you've been training for, since 2016, was it that you began?
No, I've been a property trainer since 2004.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, thousands of people that you have trained in that period of time.
No, I've been a property trainer since 2004, and I've personally lived through 3 nasty recessions because my husband, we bought our first house, which we bought what today would be called a gifted deposit and option in 1985.
So you've seen, obviously, certainly in the property education world, we see that there are always trends, right? There are certain strategies that are very in vogue, and HMOs have certainly been one of those. And you see title splits now as a real opportunity, perhaps, it's at its early stages.
Absolutely, because what people don't realise is the truly wealthy, have been title splitting since the 1800s. So if you think about it, if you look at Knightsbridge, they're apartments, aren't they? They're not houses. I mean, if you actually look at the truly wealthy going back to literally the 1800s or even the 1700s, they were title splitting. Anyone knows me knows I'm a bit of a history buff, but the leases that we grant today were actually first created as copyhold in the 1500s. That's how old this strategy is. And the wealthy just keep it quietly there. And they've literally been doing it since, the 1500s. And whenever I was a solicitor, all the way back to the I qualified in 95, although I was a trainee in 93, I was doing this strategy for the wealthy all the way back in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. And, on that point then, obviously, this is Wealth Talk. So talking about the numbers and the finances, just to try and again open people's minds as to how this can accelerate their wealth in terms of cash flow and in terms of capital. So, what are the various ways?
Yeah, so it depends where you're investing in the UK. By the way, this is an England and Wales strategy. It's not a strategy for Scotland because different legal system. Bearing in mind the other beauty about title split and subdividing properties in this way, actually they work very nicely in the southeast and the south, the more affluent areas. Ironically, you're not going to the cheaper areas of the UK, ironically, because your uplift is actually better. So somebody who's based in the south or southeast or just in an affluent area of Yorkshire doesn't have to drive or fly for for 2 hours to get to their investment area. It's much easier to do it on the next door. The way I would look at it is, as long as your apartment that you're creating is cash flowing is around £300. So let's say your individual buy to let within apartment cash flows at least £300, then it's just a multiplier of the number of units in the block. So if we keep it really, really boring and say it's 4 apartments in that block, so then we have a cash flow of £1,200. And then it's a case of, well, what money did we leave in an ROI and our money left in the deal? So that I like that, to do it that way, because then whether you've bought a house in Hull that's cost you £100,000 to buy, but it's cash flowing at £300 per month, or you've bought it in Brighton and it's cost you £350,000 to buy, and it's as long as the cash flow and the ROI works. So our clients range. We've got a lovely lady. We're working with her on a project that's worth £3 million. But I've also got another lovely gentleman who I'm working on his project's worth £150,000. So it literally does work for both ends of the scale.
I think we've covered a lot of the key points there, Harriet. Is there anything else you feel that we've not touched on today which would be useful for our listeners?
Yeah, the other thing I'd love your listeners, especially those that are quite analytical, to look at, which is quite interesting, which is something myself and Rachel have looked at. If you look at the capital growth of property over the last sort of 20 years and what's predicting forward, it works out around, I know we have ups and downs, but you're looking at about 6% a year, really. What's interesting is that, because a lot of people do multi-unit freehold buildings, so they create lots of units, but they don't do the legal split, which means that property is going up in value probably statistically about 6% per year. I know it might be less some years. But what they haven't benefited from not doing the legal split is they're only getting it on the freehold. Whereas if you actually split it into legally, you get the 6% increase on the actual units. So when you go on our masterclass, we've got a lovely flow chart doing it. And the other thing that was, for me, was a bit like a real light bulb moment was, if I asked you, Christian, how often do most people put up their rents on their buy-to-lets?
Probably every couple of years, maybe.
I would say most people answer when the tenant leaves. So if you go back and look at the statistics, rents go up, basically, on average, rents go up 2% a year. Okay? Capital values go up 6% per year. So if someone leaves a property, a multi-unit freehold building, so they physically subdivide it into units, but they don't do the legal split, normally what they're going to get is they go out and get mortgages based on a gross development value, a commercial value, a multiplier of rents. Okay? But if rents are only going up 2% per year, when you're doing, every time you go to refinance, your refinance is based on the rental income. But your rental income is only going up 2% per year. Whereas if you've legally title split and you've got individual leaseholds, you've got a choice. You can either do the rent multiplier, or you can do a comparable, bricks and mortar comparable more. And if the bricks and mortars are going up by 6% per year, your valuations go up more on a title split property than a non-title split property, it being the same property. You've got increase annually of 2% or 6%. But if you legally split it, you've got a choice. And when you see the graphs on the title split, you're like...
Very interesting. Yeah. And I guess final question, what's the biggest mistake you see people making when it comes to title splits, Harriet?
Oh, okay. The biggest mistake is, number one, not appreciating that you have to do it at the right stage, or you pay too much stamp duty or too much tax, and not going to a power team or having people around you who understand how to do it, and not understanding yourself how to do it. So you get misdirected by poor professionals. Isn't that awful? Be misdirected by poor professionals out there. And that's why I think education is so important, which I think it's great what you do at WealthBuilders. Education is so important, because if you understand what has to be done, you don't do it yourself. You become a very, very good manager of your power team, and your power team is your solicitor, your accountant, your builder, your mortgage broker. So you become the person with knowledge, and you're almost delegating, and they actually become your team. it's about education.
Absolutely. Well, a reminder once again for the masterclass that you've put together with Rachel. So we will link to that in today's show notes for anyone that wants to jump on that with you, Harriet. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us today.
Thank you ever so much.
Some great points there from Harriet. So we'll dive into those, try and pull out some of the wealth lessons as well in a second, Kevin. Let's head to Trustpilot before we do that. And lots of reviews, actually, over the last week. Lots of them around SSAS. But I'm going to pull out one in particular from Peter, who says, I was originally attracted to WealthBuilders when I came across them in an article on how to take more control of your pension through a SSAS. I'm reasonably knowledgeable about financial services, but hadn't come across SSAS before. Not surprising, really, as it sits outside of traditional financial services. Paul Brooks, SSAS Director at WealthBuilders, helped me with education, preparing myself to be SSAS ready, setting up the scheme, and a strategy for transferring existing pensions into the scheme. It's important to realise that it involves hard work and responsibilities, and Paul's knowledge, professional and ethical approach has been a great help.
Well, I think Mr. Brooks's head will be slightly enlarged today.
And rightly so.
No, we know Paul's a good guy, and it's good. I mean, SSAS, look, is a bit like title splitting, right? It sounds complicated, but it actually really isn't that much. It's just taking control of what most people delegate. And we know the difference between the dynamics, those who take action, and the delegators who often hand their money to a third party, or the drifters who forget they've even got money. And we've got so many cases of people who get connected with money they just plumb forgot about, Chris, haven't they? So this pension thing is an interesting piece, and I think we're going to write a bit more about this. We know how it serves property people really well because it gives them money that they can use to continue their property journey, and if you can do that, that's a great thing. Business owners, whatever shape their business in, whether it's they need help to support their business right now, in uncertain times, or whether they need money to help fuel a scaling, so whether you want to support your business or scale it, it's ring fencing money from your profits and your pensions together and making them accessible to the business. So everything we do about SSAS is really making money accessible for people to do what they want to do, whether it's property, whether it's business, whether it's investing, whether it's cryptocurrency, whatever people want to do, they can do, which is why it's catching on. But it's just the language that's so dark and sinister, isn't it? SSAS, it just sounds so terrible. So we're going to be doing lots of new guides for different types of people. And I think we will write one about SSAS for women, because we're still so underrepresented in the SSAS community by women. Only 25% of our SSAS community are female. So I don't know what it is that's holding women back from exploring that, but we'll try and get to the bottom of that. And also we're going to have a Q&A, aren't we, Chris? So kind of an all-encompassing, one night of a couple of hours of just Q&A on SSAS, so that you can ask questions, everything you wanted to know about SSAS, but were afraid to ask. So if you want to register for that, how would they do that, Chris?
Well, it'd be tricky because I've not set anything up yet. So we'll do that. We absolutely had lots of questions when we did the webinar a couple of weeks ago about SSAS. And of course, we have different programs at WealthBuilders, and the Academy is our program that really focuses across all the 7 pillars, that holistic view. But then we also have a specific SSAS program as well. So yeah, you're right. We decided we'll put together another kind of webinar Q&A session. So we haven't set the date or set that up, but we'll get that done next week and we can share the details.
All right, perfect. But anyway, so back to the story.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a good parallel with kind of what we do. We talk about the 5-year journey, don't we? For on average, for people to move from financial insecurity to financial independence. Obviously, some do it a little bit quicker. Some people take a little bit longer, but Harriet talked about the importance of having a plan as well. And I asked her, how did she manage to kind of just break free of that, job or business when she was working so hard as a solicitor to enable herself and her husband to go traveling. And she said, well, they created that 5-year plan and they set goals and they leveraged their home, brought home capacity into play. So they rented that out whilst they went traveling.
Well, we've seen that before, haven't we? That freedom of location issue, you've done that. Bronwyn, one of our coaches, done that. Still in in Africa, isn't she? Enjoying, doing whatever she wants to do over there and traveling whenever she wants to. And so many people have done that. So interesting that she's done it and come back refreshed. I suppose the wanderlust satisfied temporarily and then carrying on, but from a new educational place to try and teach this as a strategy, which is definitely at level 6, isn't it, in our roadmap?
Yes, that's right. And the other thing she mentioned as well, which I totally resonate, was the importance of kind of having somebody else there. So not doing it all on your own. And that led to her obviously forming titlesplit.com with Rachel as a joint venture. And, I obviously joined forces with you, Kevin, because I'd been working on my own in my business. And it's tough, when you have to make all those decisions yourself. And collaboration is a key aspect of the wealth building process.
Yeah, another parallel I think that she made very loud and clear was, and her unique take on it was baby steps. We have a mantra, don't we, which is, you could argue it's the similar thing, which is never let 30 days go by without doing something positive towards building your wealth. And that's a baby step. And so even though we haven't really interacted in training before with that company at all, and we're in a position now, aren't we, where we're actually speaking the same language?
Yeah, that's right. So let's look at some of the the aspects of the title split. It's a way. I mean, leverage is the word that comes to mind, Kevin. It's just really leveraging an asset that you've already got and perhaps looking at it in a different light, and that can be done in many different ways.
Well, leverage is the most powerful form of wealth building, and you have to understand that. We cover that, don't we, very clearly in the roadmap. And you can't really build wealth without bringing leverage into play, Chris. And we know that, but in business, you need team members, you need staff members, and with leverage here, you need the financial leverage, and of course, you need the intellectual leverage of knowing how this actually works. So I would encourage everybody who is curious about creating value, often without having to spend an incredible amount of money on it. It's really intellectual value, is to jump on the free masterclass, because at least you get to see it and you can make a judgment call for yourself whether you want to take something further or not. But a fascinating area of opportunity, because we're surrounded by property. And if you can create instant value from the leverage of a piece of knowledge plus a bit of legal work to get more value, not just more value in terms of rental, but she also talked about more value in terms of the capital value. So your net worth goes up, and in some cases, your mortgageability even goes up.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Looking at not just the rental increase, but as you say, the market value increase, which if you've got a property split is obviously much better when it comes to a remortgage refinance situation. And yes, all the details will be in the masterclass that Harriet referred to, and we'll pop the link to that in today's episode. And I guess this is just one of many property strategies, Kevin, and we've covered a lot already, but we'll be looking at a new one as well in next week's episode, and that one is serviced accommodation.
Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Particularly in current economic climates, there's been a bit of a pivoting going on, I think, in the serviced accommodation space, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, with our good friend Dave, from those who historically have used the sort of, what would we call it, the sort of, what would be that market, Chris, that most of them would focus on? What would be the generic title that they call that? The leisure market, I suppose. Those people who are taking holidays, taking breaks, the touristy type things. But increasingly, we're seeing much more focused on businesses and contractors, and a whole new way of being able to provide high quality accommodation for less than the cost of a hotel, to keep costs down for businesses, but also create a high level of recurring income for the property owners themselves. So forgive me for getting my tongue tied just a little bit today. I think we don't worry about that. That's just age creeping up on me. And I just know somebody called Heather Dunn, and I almost said Heather when I meant Harriet. So it just got me confused. So forgive the slight delay in my language today. But forgive me, Chris, and keep me going.
No, that's okay. So we hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode. As always, we would appreciate if you share with someone you know that also might find this information useful. And why not head to Trustpilot and leave us a little review. Let us know what you've been enjoying, and we would appreciate that. And of course, give you a shout out on a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kevin. Well, until next week, we'll catch up same time, same place.
Okay, then. Until then, my friend. See ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.